You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 153. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. We're so excited to have you here with us today. So, with screen time doubled because of online learning, now more than ever, critical thinking skills specific to media and devices are a necessity to help kids navigate the ever-changing influences of the digital space. In this episode of the Balanced Educator Podcast, we've invited Amy Jussel to teach us how to integrate media literacy, mindfulness, and SEL in the classroom for a transdisciplinary approach that replicates how these things come up in real life. Amy is the founder of shapingyouth.org, a media literacy organization using critical thinking tools to educate and embed habits of inquiry, enabling children to deconstruct media messages presented to them from all walks of life. I'm so excited to share this episode with you all. It's so useful. You're going to have some great strategies to take with you into the classroom. But before we get started, we're happy to share this week's sponsor. Do you want to incorporate social-emotional learning and mindfulness into your classroom to support students with mental health, focus, self-regulation, and emotional intelligence? With so much on your plate as a teacher, you probably just don't have time to get trained, develop resources, and teach the lessons yourself. Plus, you need time for self-care too. That's why we developed EduCalm, to support teachers like you. EduCalm is a fully bilingual English and French co-regulation program created by teachers. This program provides everything you'll need to build self-regulation, mindfulness, and social-emotional skills with your students through a 5-minute daily practice. With EduCalm, you don't have to be the expert. Just log in, press play, and participate with your students as you all prepare your minds and bodies for calm and focused teaching and learning together. Go to educalm.com to learn more and start using our free resources. Again, that's educalm.com, spelled EduCalme. Hello there, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Good morning.
We are super excited to have you. We are covering a topic that we've never really talked about on the podcast before, but that is so important, especially now that kids are spending so much more time on the computer, on their devices, probably a lot more time where they aren't being watched or observed or maybe even parented while they're on these devices just because of how life is changing through the pandemic. And I think teachers and even parents are kind of at a point where it's like, ooh, how should I be managing this? So you are our expert in media literacy, and we're so excited to have you here today.
It's great to be here. It's a big topic. We'll see what we can get done.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just start off. Can you introduce yourself to our audience and let us know how life led you to where you are today?
Sure. I'm Amy Jussel. I run a group called shapingyouth.org, and that deals with media and marketing's impact on kids, which is a lot these days. I come from a journalism background initially, which segued into other areas of writing, including advertising and creative direction and things like that. And I've come full circle back into the journalism, investigative reporting type style. And I think that inside out behavior of understanding how the business works, both from writing editorially and also persuasively, it helps give the insight that you need for media literacy. So I really am trying to lift and reveal what exactly is under the carpet so that any parent or educator, and particularly children, can get it, that every message they're receiving, every piece of media is a construct. It's all made to entice them, create an emotion, get a reaction, whatever the case may be, likes, social media, etc. Buy something. There are motives for everything, and you just have to start training kids early on how to inquire and what that's all about.
Yeah, that inquiry process is so important. And I think, as you said, you don't really understand how this machine works until you've kind of had a glimpse behind the curtain. And we don't always get that. So I know I was really kind of like, I learned so much once we started EduCalm, the business, and starting to learn about marketing and how that works. How do you reach your audience and let them know that you have something that can help them? How do you connect with them? And learning how ads work and things like that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is kind of I don't want to say a scary sort of machine, but you just don't understand how intricate it is until you've kind of seen the back end. So that can be really confusing to adults unless they're in it. So as adults, like where do we even start to be able to teach kids about critical thinking skills and understanding what's going on?
Well, I think kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for in terms of observational, listening. One of the things we do in classrooms is just ask them point blank, what is media? What do you see around you that's media? And they'll start with something that's very obvious, like, oh, I see the VCR, or whatever they've something that's very visual. Then they start drilling down, naming more, and the teacher's putting them up on the whiteboard or whatever. And you can start to get into everything from brands to human billboards. Everything is media. The picture of the earth, the American flag. I mean, all of those are signals and symbols and media that we consume. And the critical thinking part of it is to start habits of inquiry, I would say. And ultimately, media literacy, as the National Association of Media Literacy Educators reinforces all the time. It's all about accessing and analyzing and evaluating and creating and then acting upon media in terms of using all forms of communication. What that looks like for kids in a classroom is simple. You can use it as a walkthrough. You can look at how the desks are arranged. You can look at, why do you think that's grouped that way? Why do you think, whether it's a sage on the stage kind of teacher thing, or is it different when you have story time and you're in a circle? Why do you think all those things are designed that way? When they start inquiring about everything, there's a reason that it's set up a certain way. So think that through. And that's the same thing applies to media messages. And you start training kids early on of who's saying this, why, who might benefit from this, who might be harmed from this, who's trying to make me buy something, who's trying to, what do you know? What do you not know? Seeing a picture, what's in this picture, what's left out of the picture, what's probably right behind you that they got edited out of the picture. Everything is a construct. So that's what we're trying to teach them really early.
Yeah, that is just, as you're saying that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, such great ideas. That's such great lines of questioning, really great habit of like asking yourself and encouraging the kids in your life, your students, your kids to question, like, what is the intention behind what they're seeing? Everything has a purpose. Everything is laid out in a specific way for a reason. And we rarely stop to ask why. Why is this app encouraging me to turn on notifications? Why does it want me to do that? Well, the app is a business. They're trying to make money. So they want to get me to spend more time on that app. So what are the things that the app is doing to keep me on there for more time? And how are they making money? What is the way that they make money by keeping me on the app for more time? And who is that benefiting? So many layers of questioning. And that doesn't mean that you ask those questions and it's necessarily going to be like a bad thing that you find out that this thing that you're using is the big bad wolf, but being able to be critical about that and just be more aware of why you're choosing to spend time reading or learning from specific things.
Exactly. I think we go with that same notion of, it's not beware, it's more be aware. So the whole concept of construct is just a larger lens, and you want them to be able to question some of that.
Yeah. So you've written a book series to help teachers to bring this into their classroom and have a great space to go through this through a story lens and then have these discussions with kids. Can you talk to us about your books?
Sure. I mean, the first one it's called Secret of the Vanishing Bones, and it's about digital dogs. That's called digitaldogsbook.com is where you can find most of the content housed. But it's a whole series of media literacy. The first one I used to specifically talk about data privacy, because that's one of the things that each book has three main takeaways. This particular one is about data privacy in the first book. And I wanted them to get it in a non-scary, just what you just said, a non-scary way. We're using this media all the time, but little things like the mindfulness of the data being shared, your phone number, your address, your uniform, your school uniform, did you ask your friend before you uploaded that picture of a slumber party, whatever the case may be, or a birthday party. And parents, as they call it, sharenting, too much parenting and sharenting, parents don't think about it either. They will post a video and it's like, okay, you just gave away where your school is. You can tell by the name on that. You can tell this and that. You've got so much data in that. You need to just be aware of what you're doing. So again, it's not to scare them. It's more to make them aware. And also it applies to all the algorithms that are out there in terms of their likes and dislikes. The kids need to start questioning, wait a minute, how does this site know so much about me? How come they know that I love pink, or whatever, or unicorns or puppy dogs, whatever the case may be. How come this is following me all over the web?
Yeah.
They need to know that's not an accident. So they start to see with that critical lens. So I wanted to create the book. It's all about digital dogs detectives, and they're looking for the secret of the vanishing bones. The bones keep vanishing. And it's actually, I hate to do the spoiler alert, but it is meant to be sort of a data neutral thing. It's all about collecting data, and they think that someone is thieving all the data. It turns out not to be a data issue at all. It was a very real world application. But threaded throughout the mindfulness and the social emotional cues and things that kids related to, it made it just a storytelling thing where they sort of got the informal learning that they can bring back into a classroom setting or a parenting setting, or just a life skills setting. And it wasn't intentionally point A, point B, point C, you're going to learn this in this book. It was more of a intuitive approach. And I think that comes from my advertising background and the persuasion of understanding what the motivations are. Kids love to be in the know. They love to share with their peers and go like, okay, you want to know why that is like that? Here's why that is. They love knowledge. They just soak it up like sponges.
Yeah, totally. And I love how in your book you have follow-up questions that makes it easy for teachers to continue the discussion after the book, and kind of prompts what directions can we go with these ideas and how can we talk further about this as a group. So it's such a useful resource for the classroom as well.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it. I chose dogs because they were, they're sort of universal and you can create personalities out of them without getting too granular in terms of all the cultures and the skin tones and this and that. The flip side of that, I couldn't resist throwing in some profiling and things like that, like Rufus the raccoon, who has sort of the bandit face, and he always is getting targeted as being, it's probably you probably did it. It's like, why? Because you look like a burglar with your raccoon face. This kind of thing is what we need to start embedding with kids, that algorithms that are making assumptions about people can cause harm. And same with stereotypes. The dog is named Sam, in one of the books, it's Sam the Stray. Well, Sam could be Samantha. Sam could be Samuel. Sam could be, there are a bunch of different names. If you take just that data and an algorithm plays with it, what kind of questions do you think are going to come up for Sam? How are they going to portray Sam? What do you think that's going to mean for Sam? So it creates a lot of open-ended springboards where that mindfulness makes people stop and think a minute of, did I judge that person just on the content of what it was they said, or did I already assume that Sam was a girl or Sam was a boy or Sam was all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think there are a lot of takeaways from the book that are not necessarily all media literacy. It's also social emotional learning and mindfulness. But I think it's really important that it's a yes and. It's a
Yeah. I loved the layers within the book because, when we are tackling these types of things, social emotional learning, mindfulness, media literacy, like they aren't all in the real world. They don't all live separate lives in separate little boxes in our lives. Everything is woven together and connected. So to see those different layers all connect within the book, I think was really useful and really important when you're talking about these things with students. So I'd love to talk more about what are some questions we should have top of mind as adults, and then what should we be teaching our students when we are interacting with media? What are the questions that should be kind of at the tip of our tongue, or the lenses through which we look whenever we are consuming information?
Well, I definitely am going to. I'm going to give a shout out to one of the original co-founders of the National Association for Media Literacy Educators, because she created this very easy. It happens to be tailored to what it is you do, which is media literacy in every classroom, and I love it. It's by Faith Rogo and Cindy. I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. Scheibe. She's out of Canada too. Project Look Smart. But the way that they have broken it down in a little simple trifold, they get into, everything from what do we mean by media to the insights about the media messages, developing the habits of inquiry, the key questions. I just think it's a nice way of promoting all of those basics at once. I think my biggest thing is that all media is constructed. I start with that no matter what, because I think that the content and the techniques and how it's delivered are a huge part of it. We need kids to start being observant in everything. Going to a grocery store, you walk through and you see where the cereal boxes are. You see what colors they're in. You see how the cartoons are used on them. We see how at the checkout stand, the candy is at the checkout stand. All of the placement and the product placement and all that. I think the whole concept of viewing life through that sort of inquiry lens is important, and there's a lot of implications for teaching with that too. It can influence behaviors and attitudes and heck, the democratic process. We need to know from an education standpoint, media is really important. So I think that the value of reiterating that media is a construct is my huge point. But really putting it into a life skills perspective where you show and tell, and you have it be sort of a game where kids can play with these different elements. Like the media itself, you were saying, different people are collecting data. Well, little things that we'd like them to ask are, why do they need that data? If you're playing a game and there's an app and they're saying, we need your phone number and your address and your this and your that. Well, the kids need to be able to stop and go wait a minute, why do you need that? Or ask mom and dad. It's like one of the things I saw was a teacher saying, when they got to, hey, what's your social? It's like, wait, what do you want? What do you want?
Yeah. Wait a minute.
It's like, hold on, because when people are working from home, they're kind of like, what? They're asking for what? So, when you get to I chose the data privacy for the first book because I think that collection of data right now, since they're looking at data regulation coming up soon, and probably 2022 that will change. But right now, the data privacy is just a wild frontier, and they're scraping and grabbing as much of it as they can. And that behavioral targeting and online advertising is very specific now.
Yeah.
And that can get into everything from behavior manipulation to, we've seen it in elections, right? We've seen it in other things. They can target, if you're on the fence about this, or vaccines, or public health, or, well, you put that in kids' world, it can also alter them when they're not quite developed in their own thinking of who they are or what they want to, what they like even. If you start feeding them constant whatever, horses, you like horses once, and then you get horses and then more horses and horses. It's like, well, you might also like dogs and pigs and unicorns and whatever, but you're getting horses, a full steady diet. So I think it's that kind of thing where we can't have the tail wag the dog. Kids need to be able to separate themselves out and say, I don't want media to define me. I want to define myself. So that they take charge. They need to be the one that's empowered with the messaging and the inquiry.
Yeah, I love that. And I like how you talked about, you like horses and then it's horses. I think it's so important that from a young age, especially just the way the internet works with the algorithms these days, is like the world that we see on the internet is a world that we've created based on our interactions. So I always find it very interesting to, for example, like compare my Instagram feed to a friend's Instagram feed and just see how different that world is. When I go onto Instagram, I'm seeing a whole different world than my friend is seeing. And so I believe that what I'm seeing is the norm because that's what the algorithm is showing me based on my interests and my likes. And it's so easy to forget that there's other perspectives, other ways of looking at things, because you just keep getting fed the same perspective over and over. And then looking at what someone else is seeing so different. You're like, wow, that's a whole completely different perspective and experience of the world through our device. And, we're experiencing the world and connecting with the world through our device. And because it's the internet and you're seeing people from around the world, you feel like you're connected far and wide to the whole world, but really you're connected to people that are similar to your interests from across the world, but just regurgitating the same information. So important for adults and kids to understand that.
Yeah, it is important. And I think you just hit on something that's extremely right. Is the parents need to also understand that, because that filter bubble, and we've heard a lot about this with, the teens and Instagram and all that, and some of the harm that has done from a body image perspective. But we often don't think about the very little kids, the wee ones that are just starting to get a grip on some of these things. They don't understand how the algorithms work. They just know that it just comes to them automatically. And I think that kind of thing, it doesn't have to be couched as a, manipulation thing, but just to consider it. Just consider this, use the critical thinking and stop. And since you guys are all about mindfulness and calm and keeping things, I think the anti-bullying and relational aggression points in this are huge, because media can teach in wonderful ways. We see this with Sesame Street and PBS and really positive messages that are out there. And I think when we can teach them that critical thinking to hold and just stay calm, and I use this hand motion. I tested it on the playground with just this C. I make like a C. And it means consider it. Just consider before you go off on that kid. Consider what they may have come into from the school today, what happened to them, what could have, their dog could have just gotten run over. I mean, you don't know. Don't react. Just consider it. And it plays off of the word considerate as well, So it's like,
yeah, I love that.
It and consider it. And I think, we had this thing where I think you had in one of your podcasts, your 5 lessons with the fingers and the calm. Well, the little C I used on the playground, and I didn't have to say a word. You could put up the C and they could see you far away, and they'd go like, oh, okay, catch myself. That kind of critical thinking to instill in them early on. Think of what that other person, it's sort of an in your shoes approach of social emotional learning to understand what other people could be going through at any given time. And I think in this book, in the digital dogs thing, we have stray dogs, we have a homeless theme, we have all kinds of stuff going on in the book. I would say that my own self-critique in this is I probably kitchen sinked it. I put too much into one book because I was trying to make a whole lot of points rather than keep it all media literacy. But I wanted to test it, and it's actually proven to be very interesting to me, because the feedback I've gotten has been very different from different regions and different lifestyles, like you said, different filter bubbles. A kid from inner city Chicago is saying, well, wait a minute, where's the dad? Where's the dad of the mom and the pups in the book? Where's the dad? It's like, okay, that duly noted. like his perspective, and then taking it one step further of what he thought could have happened to the dad. Those kind of things, it can be very eye-opening sometimes. And I think that when we look at things like media algorithms and privilege, where we come from, this privileged pack of pups in the Digital Dogs book, except Sam, who's the stray, they weren't aware of their privilege. They started out like, yeah, we got to get this dog. They immediately went to that reaction without considering, could it have been because they were hungry or they needed this for the pups, or, whatever the case may be. And is it ever right or wrong? And I think that, again, you go back to kindergarten and you look at some of the basic, like Jane Elliott's work in education with the blue eyes, brown eyes in the classroom, where you segregate the kids with different privileges if you have blue eyes and brown eyes. And you start to talk about unfairness and bias, and you get to go to get water and you don't, and, that kind of thing. And that's how algorithms work a lot. You segregate things based on who's on free lunch and who's on this and who's not. That behavioral profiling is something that, people think, oh, it's just customizing more ads to me. No, it's being used for other things too. And I think that's the education for parents that we need to get across. And then again, it follows up with just basic sort of I spy with my eye, fun games approach for kids, because it's very easy to translate this into a very base level common denominator. And that's why I did it so early, K2 to K5. Because people are like, oh yeah, media literacy, we cover that in high school. I'm like, oh no, that's way too late. And even middle school, yeah, too late. I want it early on, so that even at the pre-K level, they're starting to ask questions. Inquiry is the key.
Yeah, that's so right. And I think that the questions that you bring up in this book, and in what you're saying today, it's not, we're not just talking about media literacy. We're talking about a way of viewing the world. We're talking about having the perspective of putting yourself in another's shoes. And that doesn't just happen online, that happens in person. So this is really, going between social emotional learning, mindfulness, intention, and understanding perspectives and how people are treated differently based on how they look. It brings together all of the important things, and allows us to have kind of those interweaving discussions all in one space, which really is so important. And especially as teachers in the classroom, we're like trying to give our kids all these skills. We want to support mindfulness, social emotional learning. We want to talk about media literacy, but how do we do all these things? Well, they don't have to be separate. They can all work together, and it can all become one lesson that is nuanced and weaves together all these different things.
See, that interdependence that you mentioned, I think is the key thing too. It's media literacy is not a class that you take. It's not a one-off. It's not a one and done. This needs to be integrated early and often. Of course, I wish it were mandated as a school part of the curriculum, but not just in a class. It has to be across math, across reading, across science, across all these different things, because that kind of inquiry is where you get started. And to me, the K through 5, something as simple as, when you look at who gets left out and hurt feelings and, relational aggression, some of that is something from some simple, like when you're posting photos and you see that people are having fun and you weren't invited, or, whatever, that informed consent, whether it's a birthday party or a whatever, the parents need to be aware of that too, and all those kind of things layer on in terms of even the algorithms. You could talk about, how the data they're scraping, what was it? It was somebody had a case where they found out something before the intended audience. Well, obviously, I think this is a pregnancy test, so not appropriate for this age. But
yeah,
you think of how that dials down to parents and kids. It could be mom's birthday present. If Amazon scrapes what you just bought for mom's birthday, and they start targeting mom with it, then you just blew the surprise. Little things like that where you've got to kind of make it aware of, I at least in the data privacy, I try to ask them, where does that data live? Where does it reside? Is it up in the cloud? Is it hackable? Who's collecting that data? Who has access to it? Is it encrypted? It's how long is it stored? And what purpose is it for? You don't have to get into the tech weeds with the kids. You just have to sort of launch that question in the air of like, why do they need this? That's all. Just go, why?
Yeah.
So that they think about it before they give it up.
Exactly. It teaches them to have that one extra step when they see that, oh, I've I've signed up for this new app. They're asking me for my email address. Well, why do they want my email address? Is that something I want to share? It just gives them kind of this filter or this step that they've learned of, oh, I should question this. Like, why is this the case? I remember one time as an adult, I had posted online like a picture of myself on a trip, on a holiday. And my uncle messaged me and he's like, probably not a good idea to tell everyone on the internet that you're away from your home and there's going to be no one there for the next week. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. Like, there's just so many little mistakes that we make, even if we are informed people, because there's just so many nuances of how this information gets shared and who's seeing it. And oftentimes we're just so trusting. So you don't think of how it could be used negatively. So it's important to learn that filter.
Well, and just filters in general. I think it's important that kids start understanding that, like Alexa, asking Alexa this and Alexa that, Alexa is going to be different than, all the different smart speakers have different responses too. And one of the activities you can use is to play with it and say, like, ask the same question to all these different speakers. If there's a classroom speaker, use the same level of inquiry and see if you get different answers from different devices. Or Google versus Bing versus, DuckDuckGo, or, look at it from a search engine perspective. You're going to be filtered down different rabbit holes based on who's paying for what and how that media is set up. And I think just the sheer filter of between your ears is really what we're trying to get across to the kids, is to ask questions early and often.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. This is so helpful. Now, there's so much great information that we talked about today. I'd love to just kind of simplify it for teachers now if they're feeling like, okay, so many ideas now. What would you suggest could be like the first step that teachers take towards incorporating some more media literacy into their classroom? One small step.
I would incorporate it into daily. From the time you start Circle in the morning to the end of the day. I think what you said earlier about the interdependence is key. I think it belongs everywhere. I don't think it's just about, who made this or, what actions might I take or what is the response to this or how different people view things differently. I think everything it's so easy to incorporate. You could take virtually any topic as you walk through the day. Like I said, the chairs, the placement, the reading circle, people's birthdays. How does it make you feel when you're, given the star of the day, whatever, when you're walking around through kindergarten, those good feelings, how are those good feelings translated into media? All those things. There are so many springboards and icebreakers. I did one whole session on Frozen when Frozen was like the big hit movie constantly, and dissected it from a media literacy perspective to make it relatable for parents and educators to use today's media to jump off from and get into all of this, which was really fun. So I guess that would be, if I had to choose one, I would say pick something really relevant for the kids that they can relate to. Whatever they're yakking about at the time, it might be Encanto right now, or, whatever the media du jour is that they're all going on about, and springboard off of it, and just start asking about why and feelings and mindfulness and all that, and make it relatable. I don't think getting into the weeds with data privacy and tech stuff and all that. No, that's not how this is not age appropriate. That's why I chose to make it storytelling, and I chose to do a picture book. It does dumb it down from what I'm trying to get across, but it also makes it very relatable, where you can scale up or scale down based on the audience. It's just as relevant for the parents and for the teenagers and for the high schoolers. You just have to scale it up or down based on, the story.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I kind of like making it simple.
You know what? Reading the book, I was like, this is just as important for parents and teachers as it is for students. Like, the lessons in there and the learning are so important. So where can our listeners find your book?
Well, it's all over Amazon, of course. I would love for people to find it at indie booksellers. One of our partners is called reachandteach.com. They do an online store with all geared to educators, it's very much a social emotional learning focus point. So that would probably be the place that I wish you would get it. But there's also, it's on all the, Target.com and BarnesandNoble.com and all the .coms. But also digitalbooks.com, which is the site that I created for it, here's my secret for educators, free. The whole 20-page guide for parents and educators is free on there. At Amazon, they're going to charge you for it because that's what they do. And I couldn't post it and get that marketing right without charging for it. So I tried to keep it as cheap as I could, just on a break-even cost. So I think it's like $6.99 or something like that on the Amazon site, but it's free. If you just go to digitaldogsbook.com, you can play all those activities. It doesn't have to be about the book. You can do it for your own classroom anytime. It's a whole PDF, and there are free coloring pages that I use in the classrooms too, like about data, why do you want that? What do you want? With the dogs holding up the weight, so it ties in with the book, but you don't need to have the book in order to do the activities in the coloring page. Like, one of them is a I Spy with My Eye, looking around the classroom and finding media. So they have the digital dogs writing in, I think there are like 10, and who gets to the top 10 of, which one, how many can you name, kind of thing. So I like to make the coloring pages fun, but also educational. And they're all free. It's a labor of love. I fully admit it. I'm a passionista. I think this is really important to get through to parents. And I think parents are overloaded right now. They feel outgunned, and they are when it comes to media. It's coming at them every nanosecond, and they're kind of like, I didn't know that. And I'm queuing off of the parents surrounding me and what I'm hearing and feedback. The second book is going to be all about recommendation rabbit holes and how people can get off track and go down the rabbit hole in different directions, and how we need to bring them back. And so those are the kind of top of mind things that I would like to discuss with parents and kids. So I would love to hear from educators. Maybe on your site, you can ask, what's important out there for them? What should I be writing about next?
Yep. Awesome.
Misinformation's a big one too, right?
Yeah, big time. Awesome. Well, that's going to be such a useful resource for teachers. And your story is directed towards elementary school, like K-5. But as I said, the lessons in there are so great. And I think even just reading the story in a high school classroom could be useful. And using this free resource that you told us about can be a great springboard, no matter what age group you're teaching. So I'm going to link all of these things in our show notes. So for those listening, you can find our show notes at educalm.com/TBE153, educalm.com. That's spelled EDUCALME/TBE as in the Balanced Educator 153, because this is episode 153.
Well, that's
awesome.
Great. And they can also find all the free, obviously I've got 10 years of articles that I've written about, like the Frozen one I mentioned, or anything like that on social emotional learning at shapingyouth.org.
Awesome.
Shaping Youth is my sort of nonprofit, unfunded education site. And that's got a lot of deep dives in terms of things that educators could use. Primarily educators. It's kind of TEDx for education, only very easy to digest and put into practice every day.
Awesome. Well, us teachers appreciate that so much. We need the resources. We need things to help us out because we are overloaded. So thank you so much for creating these things. It's so needed. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for helping get the word out.
All right. I really enjoyed that interview with Amy. I hope you did too. She shared so many useful resources that you can get for free. So make sure you check out our show notes to get the links to all the resources that she shared in this episode. Again, the show notes are at educalm.com/TBE153. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode and got value from it, please share it with someone that you think would enjoy it too. Have a wonderful week.